How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is RuffledRowlit, and welcome back to a brand new video, guys. Today, we're going to be doing a video in regards to Pokemon Sword and Shield. So, as you guys may know, recently there's been kind of a bit of a distress within the community, and the whole Bring Back the National Dex movement, or hashtag Bring Back the National Dex movement, has been going on, with people trying to, get their points across to the Pokemon Company as well as Game Freak, that they aren't happy with the National Dex and that sort of stuff. And of course, a dissection of all the kind of like graphical issues that exist within Pokemon Sword and Shield's, trailers so far, and that sort of stuff. So there's been a lot of that going on right now. I'm going to be frankly honest. There's been loads of that, and I'm going to be making a few more videos where, like, students that do, like, 3D and stuff, like 3D art and 3D work, I'll be discussing, like, what they, kind of found and what they've discovered and stuff like that. But I thought for today's video, I wanted to look at Sword and Shield from a bit of a different perspective, from both the positives and the negatives. And I thought we'd take a look at the positives first, because I feel like we should start this off in a positive manner and go down the hill of, like, the negativity a little bit later. But do note, though, that we're going to go through quite a few of, different things here. We're going to start with the positives first. So let's get into the positive stuff right away, starting with the first one here, which is the wild areas. So honestly, the wild areas are probably the best part of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now, the negative part of that, which I'm going to add in really quickly, and I know this isn't really meant to be, kind of like part of this, but I'm just going to quickly add this because I'm going to expand on it later in the, cons, so to say, or the negatives, which is that the wild areas, they're great, but they're also very barren and don't really have much in them, you know what I mean? There's, like, for example, the complaint about the textures on the trees, and there's just a lack of them. There's a lack of bushes and stuff, and just a lack of things in the biome itself, in the biomes, rather, and in the open world and the open wild area. There's just a lack of things, you know what I mean? It's kind of very barren and open, whereas if you compare to something very similar to Pokemon Sword and Shield, like being, for example, Breath of the Wild, it has far more things going on, far more, like, trees that are more luscious and better looking and all that sort of stuff. So that's one of the, like, side complaints there. But I think wild areas themselves are perfect. We've been asking for ages for a more free Pokemon experience where we have more freedom to explore around, go around, do things, we've been asking for that for ages now, and finally we're getting that in one shape or form somewhat, right? We're getting it somewhat here, and I do appreciate it. The fact that the wild area is going to work in so many different manners is awesome, and we're going to go through a few other positives here in terms of that could work. So the next thing here is the new camping feature. Now, the new camping feature, we don't know much about it yet. There's still more details to come, and I will make an updated positives and negatives video in the future once we have more details about all this. But I think the new camping feature looks great. You'll be able to set up camp at any place, I guess, within the actual, like, open world wild area. You'll be able to set up a camp, interact with your Pokemon, feed your Pokemon, that sort of stuff. It's going to be a great little feature on the side, and I do really like it. I think if they can expand upon that and, like, make it into something similar to how we had the feature of, like, whatchamacallit, like the way we had the feature of, like, the secret bases and stuff. If they can make it something like that, we can make an actual camp, and you can, like, build, like, almost like how you do it in, like, Fallout and stuff, like Fallout 4 or whatever, where you can build, like, your own little camp and stuff. If you could do something like that, it would be sick, but I think it's going to be more likely to be something like a temporary thing where you just kind of settle down, and it's like a place for you to heal your Pokemon, interact with them, like, just play around with the Pokemon, that sort of stuff. I think that's what's mainly going to be aiming for. So, next thing, though, is potential Gigantamaxing. So Gigantamaxing is from a leak that came out, a real leak for Pokemon Sword and Shield, and Gigantamaxing was meant to be a different form of Dynamaxing. Now, Dynamaxing just makes your Pokemon larger, and when the Pokemon does get larger, it has, like, a kind of a unique animation and all that, but really isn't anything special. It's just a Pokemon being scaled up. It isn't a big deal, right? Dynamaxing in itself is not that big of a deal, but Gigantamaxing is different. Why? Because Gigantamaxing is apparently going to make the actual Pokemon itself look different. For example, the examples they were given was that, for example, Pikachu, when it Dynamaxes, won't just look like a normal Pikachu, but instead it's going to have the design of the old school Pikachu, which is all fat and chubby and stuff, and it's going to actually look different. Same thing with Lapras, that it's going to look different and have, like, musical notes on it and stuff like that. And then on top of that, also, like, Meowth is not going to be your normal Meowth when it's Dynamax, but rather it's going to be a fluffy, big, chunky Meowth that's going to be really, like, big and fluffy with, fluffy fur or whatever. So basically, that just, that sounds like a great feature, because that feels far more unique than Dynamaxing. Dynamaxing in itself is kind of boring. I feel like that's one of those features we're going to have fun with for a short amount of time until we're really bored of it and we're not going to care for it anymore, right? It's just huge Pokemon. What's the big deal after a while? Oh, cool, Wailmer, like Wailord or whatever. After a while, cool, we've seen it once, not really that interesting anymore. Oh, cool, we got, like, a giant, Pikachu, a giant this, a giant that, right? After a while, the novelty value of it will kind of wear off, and, you'll be looking at it from more of a different perspective, like, what's so unique about it, really, because it's just a larger Pokemon. It's the same thing, just larger, which isn't really that impressive. But Gigantamaxing could be impressive though, because that would be a larger version of a Pokemon, but also that Pokemon's design being somewhat changed, like having a old school Pikachu and a Gigantamaxes. That would be so freaking cool. I actually would love that. That's if Gigantamaxing is real, which it most likely is, because that leak had everything right so far. So hopefully it is real though. Now the next positive feature is the weather system is back, ladies and gentlemen, and they also have it improved upon. They have improved upon the weather system, and this is something that people don't know, but in the new weather system, there can be electrical storms that can happen, like an electrical storm plus rain equals increased damage to water type and electric type moves, actually, which is so freaking cool. And this can happen at the same time. So when you're in a battle, if you end up using a water type move or an electric type move, they're enhanced and way stronger than they usually would be in the open world areas and the, you know, the wild areas, so to say, which is fantastic. I asked for a weather system to be returned into the games, and it has. And not just that, but also the next positive here is the day and night cycle is back. Okay, the day and night cycle is in the game. We get to see kind of like the dawn of like the open world area. You can see kind of it's getting like, you know, really late. And you can see that it's getting, like, you know, the sunlight's going down, and you can see Pokemon, like, are, you know, walking around, like, the ghost Pokemon around the little tower or whatever, which means that day and night cycles are back, ladies and gentlemen, and that I'm happy about, because I love day and night cycles in Pokemon, and I'm happy they've returned in this game. So, that's one thing. Next thing, third-person rotatable camera in wild areas. Now, it's only in the wild areas, which is disappointing, but this still has to do with, like, Game Freak's kind of lack of you know, wanting to make a full, like, city, because when they make cities and stuff, people give them too much credit. All they really do with the cities, and if you use a no-clip tool, which there are a few videos you can see on the internet, if you search up like Pokemon Out of Bounds, there's a really good series on YouTube from a YouTuber who's made kind of videos where he shows what really it looks like from different, like, you know, perspectives that you will never see. So for example, normally in Pokemon, your camera is in one position, right, and you can't really rotate it. Only a few games have allowed for rotation slightly, but when the camera is in one position, like in Sun and Moon, the reason it's in that position is so that you can't see what's from the other side, because from the other side it's empty. It's a development trick they do, so they don't have to develop every aspect of the map, but just make the one part that you will see, which is just kind of a bit of a lazy man's method to, you know, avoid having to make a full world, but just kind of make like the only thing, like the, you know, kind of like the window shelf, but you won't see actually what's behind that in the actual store, because there isn't anything there. You'll only see the window shelf, right? And that's kind of what they do with Pokemon, you know, by keeping the third-person camera, you know, an inaccessible thing, but they're gonna do it in the open world areas because they're so open and barren, and there's really, you know, just there's nothing there to really hide, because they're gonna be pretty straightforward. But in cities, you'll notice that you will not have a rotatable camera, but it will be locked in position. So because if you'd rotate it, you'd notice that it's a black void in the distance. There's nothing there, or the map just looks really iffy because they didn't build those parts, which is understandable, but I just feel like Pokemon one day needs to achieve that level where they actually have rotatable cameras across the board. But I think starting with this, with the wild areas, is a good start. It's a good starting point, but they really should be here at this position already across the whole game already. But you know what? Hey, whatever. Game Freak are different, and they are kind of slow when it comes to getting to this, you know, getting to these things fast enough like other companies. But hey, I'll give them benefit of the doubt. I still appreciate it's in the game. I love it. I love the wild areas. The fact that they're still there. Sure, are there issues? Of course. Now, next thing, gyms are back and they are larger. Now, gyms have returned, and I really didn't like the island challenges. I like the concept of them, but I didn't like them in you know, practice when they were used within the, you know, the Alola region. I thought they were kind of like iffy and just kind of like a worse version of gyms that really didn't feel too great. And now gyms have returned where they made them into big stadiums, but before you actually take on the gym, you actually have to still do like the gym kind of challenges before you take it on, you know, going through like these puzzles and stuff, which you can see with the water type gym, which is freaking great, man. Like, that is so freaking awesome and makes me so happy. So that is returned. Now, next thing, online gameplay with friends. Now, apparently, and this is not 100% confirmed yet, it's still a bit of an iffy thing, but I think we can pretty much establish that you will be able to play with your own friends in the open world wild area. You'll be able to actually meet them in the game and walk around with your friends and stuff, which is fantastic if it is true. Now, we saw some gameplay of it, but I'm not sure if that's actually like 100%, you know, confirmed that you'll be able to walk around with friends in the actual game. If it is, then that's fantastic, and that's awesome. That means we'll be able to interact, like, you know, I'll be able to queue up with, you know, viewers and stuff, and it'll be freaking awesome. Now, of course, the question is, what's the limit of players you can play with? Will it feel more like an MMO, or will it not? Or will it just be one of those things where, like, the other players are just kind of like, you know, static, or, like, you know, I mean, kind of like static, like NPCs, you know, that just kind of like walk around in their own patterns and come close to you, and when you interact with them, they just give you like an item and stuff. Is that all they're gonna do, or are you gonna actually be able to, like, you know, see your friends walking around doing their own little journeys, catching their own little Pokemon while you're doing your own thing? Is that what's gonna be happening? If so, that's fantastic and that's awesome. If not, slightly, you know, more disappointing, but who knows. Now, last good point that I have here, and there probably is more positive things, and you can leave your own list down below in the comment section, guys, but the next positive thing is Wooloo, okay? I don't care what anybody says, Wooloo is one of the most positive things about this game, dude. Wooloo is precious, and we gotta love Wooloo, okay? That's all I'm gonna say, alright? That's all I'm gonna say. Now, let's get over to the actual negatives, though. Starting with no national dex, okay? So, I've got to be honest, right? No national dex is quite sad, okay? And this is the biggest thing that's an issue, right? Because people want to be able to catch every single Pokemon in their journey. They want to be able, like, you know, not maybe even just catch them in the journey, but they just want to be able to transfer their old Pokemon. Even if they can't get them in, you know, this region, they want to be able to transfer them over so they can enjoy the games, you know, like through competitive or whatever they're going to be doing, you know, anyways. Like, they want to be able to do that, but now that won't be a possibility. We won't be able to do that at all. That won't be an actual viable thing unless it's a Pokemon that you know, that's in the Galar Pokedex. So I think no national dex and the ability to not have, like, the fact that none of those Pokemon are even in the Sword and Shield games, which means that you won't be able to trade them over, is just really freaking disappointing and just honestly a sad thing, if I'm going to be frankly honest. But on top of that, that's not all though. We also have no Mega Evolutions or Z moves. Now, Z moves, I know I don't care much about Z moves. I think majority of people don't give a shit about Z moves. But in Mega Evolutions though, and I think Z moves, I mean, including mostly here because it's kind of out of principle that you know, they're removing 2 features for the sake of Dynamaxing. But I think Mega Evolutions being removed is really sad. Now, I get it if they're removing them because they want to do a brand new feature, like a brand new start, with Dynamaxing being the new feature. But I feel like it's so insignificant. Dynamaxing is so insignificant compared to Megas. Megas are far more interesting, far more, like, you know, kind of unique to them, you know what I mean? Whereas Dynamaxing is something that every single Pokemon in the game is going to have, and it's just like, cool, it's going to get larger, what's the big deal, you know, who cares? Whereas I feel like, you know, if Gigantamaxing is a thing, if there actually is Gigantamaxing and the Pokemon can look different and have different unique designs, then I'm on board with it, then I'm fine with it, because then I can be like, okay, I'm fine with this, because Gigantamaxing makes more sense. The Pokemon looks unique, it looks different, it looks fine, I'm happy with this, right? I'm okay with it. But if there is no Gigantamaxing and all we get is Dynamaxing, then I'm actually pretty pissed off, because I think Dynamaxing is a pretty shitty excuse for a replacement for Megas. You could have definitely done a better feature, but then again, that's only if there isn't Gigantamaxing. If there is Gigantamaxing, then I think we're Gucci. Now, next thing, no following Pokemon. They literally showed us in Pokemon Let's Go Beach, Let's Go Eevee that there are following Pokemon, and now they don't want to give us in this game. So again, another one of those things where, like, they'll create a feature people love and then they'll just remove it. They do this all the time. This is Game Freak's biggest issue, is that they give us stuff we love and then they decide to just, like, totally rip it away from us the next game, you know, in the iteration or the next game that comes, you know what I mean? And I think Fallen Pokemon is something that everybody did love, and something that I even loved with Let's Go Beach, Let's Go Eevee, something I really enjoyed, but now, unfortunately, ain't gonna be a thing anymore. So, next thing, which is textures, graphics, and also movement cycles. Now, let me start with textures. I think the textures are somewhat fine. Some of them are pretty, like, low res and stuff. I think the cities are really well made, whereas the open world area, it looks in some areas good. Like, I think the desert area looks really nice. The trees are kind of like, you know, they're dead, like, it's dead trees. They don't have, like, leaves on them and all that stuff, and it's like a sandstorm and stuff. That looks great. I think in the trailer it looks great. When it's raining, it looks great. The water looks great, but then you have the trees, which look really bad. The berry tree, which looks literally like Play-Doh, looks so bad. You also have, like, some textures with, and, like, you know, some models which are sticking out of the ground. There's popping, where characters will, like, you know, Pokemon will just pop in into the screen, which is, like, it shouldn't really be happening in a game that is kind of pretty, like, let's be fair, pretty small compared to other, like, franchises and stuff. It reminds me of something like Fallout 76, which is a shit show of a game. You know, it kind of reminds me of that, like, where you'll just see shit popping up and just being really weird and glitchy and shit. And it's like, really are really at this point now with Pokemon where, you know, these things have to be happening, but who knows. So that's one of the things there. But also my biggest grievance, besides textures and shit, because I can forgive textures and shit, because honestly, like, that I can forgive, but what I cannot forgive is the movement cycles for the actual trainers. Now, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but if you look at some gameplay from the water type gym, that person you always talk to, that guy, like, when you entered a new gym, that guy right at the start, which you can talk to, they will usually give you like a soda or a bottle of water or something, a water bottle, right? Or bottle of water, right? Yeah, so he'll give you like a soda or a bottle of water, whatever. That guy, right? His animation is the most stiff thing in the world, dude. He walks like a robot, like, You know, he walks like this. You know, it's the stiffest animation I've ever seen. It's the same animation cycle they used in Sun and Moon, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, X and Y, ORAS, and all these games. It's the same freaking cycle of animation. They haven't done no changes to it, and that really frustrates me. I hated that. And I said back in Let's Go, if the next games, the next generation of games, have those cycles of animations, I'll be so pissed off. And up until now, they hadn't shown us, because all the gameplay footage we had been shown of other NPCs and stuff was in battles where we can't see those, like, movement cycles, and also in cutscenes. That's all we'd seen of characters. Now we've actually seen what they look like when you play the game, and it's the same old, awful freaking movement cycles that I just despise, honestly. I just despise those. They're so freaking bad, and it's just ludicrous. And I don't know why they just can't make the effort to just literally make different movement cycles that don't look like they're robots. Like, come on, it's the same cycle you're using for all these characters. And since the models of all these characters, these like NPCs, are pretty much like using the same kind of rig and stuff, like they aren't really unique. They're kind of just like larger or smaller versions, with different like outlines. But overall, the actual like movement is actually the same for majority of them, except if it's like a gym leader or something. You know what I mean? Then it will be slightly more unique. But for the NPCs, it's mostly the same shit. Why couldn't you just have made them slightly more unique? Or just made it so that they don't look like robots when they're walking? That's all I wanted. You don't even need to make them super unique. You can use the same one for all of them. Just make it not look like they walk like robots, where they just kind of like, I am a robot. You know what I mean? They just like rotate their full body like this, you know what I mean, while standing still. It just looks awful. It just looks really bad. Now, the final thing on the list here for negatives is Dynamaxing is kind of boring and uninspired / uncreative of a feature / gimmick. So yes, all these things tend to be gimmicks, right? And I think usually when we refer to like these features like Mega Evolutions and Z moves and stuff as gimmicks, because the word gimmick is meant to be just something that's gimmicky and not really like, you know, unique in itself, but just something that you kind of just like, you know what I mean? And I think in the past, I recall it a gimmick because we kind of like thought of it as gimmicks because it was just a brand new, like, kind of thing, thingamajig, right? That was always added. And I think Megas were kind of the best of those, and I think Z moves were not the best. I didn't really enjoy them, but Dynamaxing is probably like one of the most uninspired things, but there are theories though that can make it like slightly more logical and better. But I feel like as long as there is Gigantamaxing, I think Dynamaxing will work well with that. If they mix those two together, that would be perfect, and then also that would kind of explain away the National Dex thing and like give us a little bit of them a little bit more leeway with why they didn't include the National Dex and all that sort of stuff. So I think in general though, ladies and gentlemen, that's a general gist of what I had to say today, guys. So if you did enjoy the video, drop a like down below. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more. And I think that is the list I had. What do you guys think about your own personal thoughts? What are your pros and pros and cons? What are your positives? What are your negatives of Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. My name is RuffledRowlit. Have yourselves a great day, and bye bye, ladies and gentlemen.